Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I am your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Jess, who is a mother and survivor of sex trafficking and an advocate for children and little tiny baby kittens. In this conversation, we tackle New York State's Proposition 1, which is an amendment to the Equal Rights Amendment to their Constitution. And I'm going to read a little bit of the text here. It includes, no person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of this state or any subdivision thereof. No person shall, because of race, color, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, creed, or religion, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy, be subject to any discrimination in his or their civil rights by any other person or by any firm, corporation, or institution, or by the state or any agency or subdivision of the state, pursuant to law. Nothing in this section shall invalidate or prevent the adoption of any law, regulation, program, or practice that is designed to prevent or dismantle discrimination on the basis of a characteristic listed in this section, nor shall any characteristic listed in this section be interpreted to interfere with, limit, or deny the civil rights of any person based upon any other characteristic identified in this section. Now, Jess and her cohorts are concerned that this blurring of the lines of sex as a biological category and gender identity as a cultural category will negatively impact women and children. And there is a flaw in this conversation with Jess where she told me that the law is to protect sexual expression, and we get on kind of a tangent about why the state would want to be protecting sexual expression, and that's not actually in the law. She meant gender expression. But we know that this is all being queered, meaning that the lines are being intentionally blurred and can have negative results. What those results are, Jess gets into with her concerns. You can find links to her work and to the organization that is trying to raise awareness about Prop 1 down there in the description. If you enjoy this content, consider liking, subscribing, and donating if you so desire. Without further ado, here is Jess. Good morning.
Hi there. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well today. It's a good day. The kittens
Oh,
are
yeah?
thriving. Yeah, the kittens are thriving, and I love that.
What do you mean? They have a post and they're just scratching away?
No, I have ba bottle babies right now. And usually bottle babies don't make it.
Hmm.
Yeah, they were orphaned, I think, around day 7. So when I got them, they still had like a little crispy bit of their umbilical cord left.
Yeah.
And typically speaking, you just try to like make them comfortable, try to get them to eat something, and they will reject the formula because it's not mom. And that's all you
Hmm.
can really do is just be with them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of typically what you expect out of little bitties like that. But we're a week in and everybody's alive and they're growing and they're really thriving and they've taken to the formula. So
Oh,
it's good
fun.
news. Yeah, it's good news.
I had one kitten came to us probably 5 or 6 days old, and we nursed him
Oh,
up. He became a very, very powerful, the most violent, beautiful beast I've ever met.
that's great. Do you still
Yeah.
have that one or?
He ran off when we
Okay.
moved. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was fiercely independent.
They typically are the cats. It's just odd that you had an independent one that was a bottle baby
Hmm. Are they
because,
usually,
oh yeah, if they make it, the bottle babies are like stage 5 clingers. They want to be on a person
oh,
all the
wow.
time. They
Yeah.
love humans, and they don't see us as much of a threat, which is dangerous for them.
Hmm.
So you really have to make sure that they get to a loving home and that they're going to
Oh,
be appreciated. So.
yeah. How many
They,
of these do you go through a year?
Oh gosh, it just depends. It depends on how many people reach out, how many people need the help. We are a really tiny organization, so my numbers are not big. Sorry, I gotta reach for one real quick. He's awake.
Oh,
Oh, there's
you're the
one.
pressure bird.
Yeah, that's Curly. And here's Larry. And
Uh,
Mo is still sleeping. But they've been really good, and I'm super proud that they've done what they've done in the time that we've had them.
Yeah.
And
Eyes are open.
eyes are open, very clear. Everybody's healthy.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh, d-
So
uh, do you ever
yeah,
keep them?
but no, nope.
No.
That's
No.
that's that's not fostering.
Okay.
So we foster and then we send them along. The only time I ever broke that rule is with I have a 120-pound Mastiff, and she's not homeable to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I got her around week 6, and she had been hit in the face repeatedly,
Oh,
and
geez.
she associates the human hand with nothing good.
Mm-hmm.
So she's bonded to me. She does well with my husband and one of my twin boys, but not his brother.
Oh, no.
I know. Well, so I keep her away from her triggers and make sure that she gets what she
Yeah.
needs, and she'll be mine for life because otherwise she'll end up euthanized.
Yeah. Your child, do they match weight to weight with the Mastiff? Or are they still smaller than?
Oh, okay. So I got a lot of kids.
Oh,
My
really?
yeah, yeah. I have
Foster
6,
or homegrown?
both.
Wow.
I
Okay.
take care of the people. I believe in safe spaces for young people because I didn't always have that.
Yeah.
So I'm on the board of trustees at my library, and then at my house, there's always some conglomeration of children that don't actually belong to me that my kids will bring home, or, just find their way up the road and hear that I've got sandwiches. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And, then there's kids that are always in crisis. And so I'll do, something like 72 hours of just what I call prevention. They like to call it prevention, right? Human trafficking prevention. It really is
Hmm.
just free babysitting. That's
Yeah.
what that's what that is. So I just do that, and I'll have, a couple of young ladies whose, parents just can't do it for the weekend or whatever the case is. And I don't judge, and I'm just there, and I just want to keep them safe. So they can come hang out at my house, and that's the way it is.
Hmm.
So my bio kids are 27 is my oldest, and he was born out of trafficking when I was 14. So we have a really unique relationship, but he has parents that raised him, and he
Hmm.
calls me now and again to thank me for not aborting him. So
Hmm.
he's very direct about that, which is cool. And
Hmm.
then my oldest daughter just made me a grandma. She's 23, and she was the result of I mean, I don't want to say a sexual assault because but it was
Hmm.
one of those situations where consent is fuzzy.
Yeah.
And so I was homeless when I had her because I was just out of foster care, and she has parents that raised her. So that makes for a different relationship too. And then my twins are 20 years old, and I raised them alongside their dad. We co-parented them, and oh, you two are having a fight about this bottle.
Gimme, gimme,
Sorry.
gimme, 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 gimme. You need to have like a proper cat bottle that's got 8 nipples on it.
That would be so good. That would help me a lot. So my boys, they're both in the military.
Oh.
I've got one in boot camp right now. He's going into the special forces in the army, and then I've got one who's getting ready to deploy to Spain, and he's in the Navy.
Okay.
And then my two youngest are still at home. I have a 12 and a 10-year-old. And my 12-year-old is a piano player, third year piano player student, and he's very gifted, strongly opinionated, some kind of autistic, I don't know, but it never
Hmm.
affected his learning. He's just really he's very blunt and very creative, and he remembers just about everything you tell him. And
Hmm.
then my 10-year-old daughter is, a cannon full of glitter.
Oh.
So she's spirited and also creative and into gymnastics, and it's been I have a good life.
Wow. What a
I'm
lineage.
I'm mightily blessed.
So, what do you want to talk about?
The ERA Prop 1 for New York State in the fall because it affects New York State parents and children. There's not a lot of There's not a lot of publicity surrounding this specific piece of legislation that they're proposing, and it goes to public vote in November on the 5th, which is the same day as the presidential election. So it's not getting a lot of traction in the news. It's not getting a lot of discussion. And yet it proposes to make sweeping major changes to the way that we are handling parents' rights.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not only that, but I feel like it really sets children up for difficulties in the future when it comes to health outcomes. The wording of this piece of legislation is really broad, and it allows for the interpretation that it allows for would mean that the organization that I represent, which is Leah's Place, would actually not even be allowed to be open in New York State because we would be
Hmm.
discriminating against natal males that
Ah,
identify as female mothers. So we're not even open yet. We've been
oh,
doing, 5 years of legal infrastructure building to get our
okay.
501(c)(3 not for profit. We've started doing the early work of taking care of animals in the community because animal therapy has been the most beneficial type of therapy
Hmm.
besides prayer for me as a trafficking survivor. So it really does a good job of priming the human for touch after a childhood of not good touch,
Yeah.
in my experience. So, and that's something that you really need to be able to do and deal with as a parent because your child wants to reach for you, you want to reach for your child. But if touch hurts and your first impulse is to recoil, that work needs to be done to help bridge that gap so that you can approach them with, open arms and a loving heart without feeling the need to protect yourself just because of your own instincts.
Hmm.
So, I do have some trafficking survivors that have come to me from some assistance here and there in helping them with like, apartments, right? Just, looking around, right, places to rent. So safe housing is always the first step to being able to put a life back together after trauma like that. That's so all encompassing. And I really am looking forward to being able to provide that instead of being able to provide, outside resources. So we were looking at being able to open in the spring. However, if this passes, then it's a huge question mark on whether we'll be able to move forward.
Hmm.
But there's also a question mark surrounding, let's just say, age of consent. If the ERA Prop 1 passes through the public vote in the fall and everything goes into effect the following September, um, we're giving children the right to sexual freedom, freedom of expression, sexual autonomy, and pregnancy outcomes. So this is a civil right that we want to guarantee them. And this isn't just, a law that we can change later. This is a constitutional amendment. So we're looking to make our state a flagship for sexual freedom for children. So if a 35-year-old man, like in my case, were to be able to, oh, I don't know, convince a mom, like my mom, who had problems with drugs and mental illness, that, she should leave her 12-year-old daughter, let's say, like in my case, with this person, right, in exchange for payment. And this child is now in a relationship with this adult male. Will you be able to prosecute that male because that child has freedom of sexual expression? That child has a civil right guaranteed to them, stating now, as a New York State resident, that this is supportable, I suppose. I can't imagine what you would do in that instance after this passes that would have any kind of a lasting legal impact negatively on the part of somebody that would be looking to interact with a child in such a manner.
Is
I
there
can't.
a are they lowering the age of consent
No.
or
So again,
dismantling it?
it's a dismantling on a larger scale, because age of consent is a law. And this isn't a law. This will be amending the New York State Constitution, meaning that everything that we believe in this state revolves around sexual freedom for minors. And it doesn't say sexual freedom for minors. What it says is age discrimination regarding sexual expression and age. So it's the intersection of those two items. It becomes legally protected that you have the civil right to sexual expression regardless of what your age is. You are now free to express yourself sexually. You are free to choose, to become a different gender without your parents' consent or knowledge. You are free to end a pregnancy as a minor without your parents' consent or knowledge. So it opens up a world to children, and we wouldn't be guaranteeing them the civil rights of anything else. They don't get civil rights to free speech according to this amendment change, constitutional change that we propose here. They're not going to get, the civil right to, property ownership. I just I don't want to laugh. It's an inappropriate response, laughter, so I apologize. But
Oh.
it's so wild to me.
Hmm.
This is so far out of the realm of my understanding of protecting children. And my interest in protecting children goes back a really long way from when
Yeah.
I myself was a child that was not protected. So I've spent this lifetime in, America just watching, all of the side effects of the legal structure that we've put into place that ends up making it a very dangerous world for children to be in. And I cannot imagine that this specific change that we would make to the structure of our entire state's constitution would set them up for success in any shape, way, or form. I
Well,
can't.
I can see the roots of this proposition or amendment
Sure.
in limiting discrimination based on sexual orientation.
Absolutely. We will
Right.
all want everybody to be able to have a nice libertarian experience once they're a consenting adult. I like that.
Yeah.
Once you throw the word age in there, then you have a funny conundrum, and it just threatens to tear apart so much of what we've put together for legal protections for young people in the last 100 years or better of lawmaking in New York State. In addition to that, the trouble too becomes in the verbiage in which it appears on the voting ballot itself. Because if you're a voter who hasn't heard anything about this, say on the news, hasn't read anything about this from, your local sources here in New York State, because again, this is it's strangely absent from the conversation right now. When it comes to voting in New York in November. Most people that I talk to about this haven't heard about this, and when I tell them about it, they don't believe me.
Well,
So I'm having to do a
is
lot
the
of like,
is the wording sexual expression? Is that
yes,
that's the
the
precise word?
the words are sexual freedom of sexual expression and
Okay, so
pregnancy, yeah, to choose pregnancy outcomes.
freedom of
And
sexual expression, does that mean you can just masturbate on a park bench? Is that
probably
because that
Probably
right?
that sounds right to me. If I have total freedom of sexual expression and you cannot discriminate against me in relation to that, then yes, why wouldn't I be able to do that?
Yeah.
So again, it's just so an older, let's say an older voter, right, age 65 is getting all of their information from CNN or MSNBC, and I'm not knocking those
Let's
outlets
not do that.
because no, I'm not going there. But I'm saying like, let's say that they're getting all of their information there. Fine, good. This is never mentioned. Okay. It's not something that is on their radar for whatever reason. And that's that. And then they walk in and they see this on the ballot. They see this ballot measure and they see the words civil rights. And then they see the words age discrimination. And they will think that this has to do with them. That is the knee-jerk reaction. Oh, I will have to vote this. because I don't
Hmm.
want to be, I want my civil rights without having my age discriminated against.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's, it's a common conception from what I've heard. Oh, well, that's good because
Well,
in age
how would a
discrimination,
65-year-old be discriminated with regard to age and
I
sexual
know
expression? Like,
exactly.
what,
I know
where does
how
that,
could you?
who needs that protection? Somebody who wants to violate
Somebody who
the
wants to
privacy,
masturbate in a
yeah,
park, maybe.
or walk into
So,
a women's restroom.
oh, absolutely. But that's already protected in New York State. We are
Okay.
already allowing, again, we're being asked with this piece of legislation and with the current culture to ignore everything that we were ever taught about human biology. And not just that, but
What about
developmental
the right to
biology.
civility? Talk about
Right.
civil rights.
Civility. I don't think civility is involved in civil rights anymore, Benjamin.
Yeah.
From what I hear and
It's
see.
oppressive. It's normative.
Yeah, well, we've normalized a lot of things.
Yeah.
We did work for years to destigmatize all of the stuff that we're doing now.
Yeah.
So this has been massaged into the culture over time.
Well, can we steel man this? Can we
Uh,
what's the good side of this? What are they trying to protect? And the first
um,
thing I think of is probably gay rights, but I'm pretty
Abortion
sure that
rights. We're going straight for it. We're not talking
sexual
much about,
expression includes the abortion of
well,
the
when they say,
byproduct of a sexual act.
right. And then when they say pregnancy outcomes, that's what they mean. So any minor child who had a relationship with an older male, let's
Yeah.
say, gets pregnant and would be able then to go to school and get either a referral or maybe a procedure or maybe the pills, the abortion pills given to them by the school because,
Yeah.
again, it's provided through the schools without parental consent or knowledge. And now that the
And
pills are
what
available,
kind of morality is the school building into them? That
um,
sexuality and the byproduct of it is just a natural function. There's no inherent morality in the human life involved in the creation, the procreative act,
I
right?
think that,
They've
yeah,
already,
I think that that's been totally ignored. I think that we're not even discussing anymore that the idea and the notion of, human intimacy is,
yes.
and sex between a man and a woman, right, in a good relationship would be the best idea for a child to be born into. I mean, because with what they're rolling down the pike now, the reproductive technology that is being discussed, and again, all of these things come out ahead of time and they massage it into the
Jeez.
culture.
Yes.
So I really think it's very much, I think it's very much a new world order if I'm
Yeah.
putting a tinfoil hat on. And, it's hard for me to not do that and, having read things like the Jaff memo, which sort of puts a lot into
That sounds
focus.
ominous. What's this Jaff memo?
Oh, you don't know about the Jaff memo?
No, enlighten me or
Ooh, all
darken
right,
my doorstep.
I shall. I keep a copy of it in my purse because this is another one that people don't believe. I didn't, you don't want to believe these things about your own country,
Society.
government. All right. So,
Yeah.
Jaff memo is a 9-page memo that was written in 1969 by Frederick Jaff, who was the CEO at the time, I believe, or vice president, I'm sorry, vice president of Planned Parenthood. Federation of America sent a 9-page memo to Bernard Berelson, who was president of the Population Council, outlining various proposals under the consideration by the eugenicists of the day.
Hmm.
So essentially, how shall we make sure that American people do not have too many children, especially us undesirable poors?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, yeah,
So,
especially certain stock, as
of
they would say.
course,
Yeah.
yeah. People like myself, born out of wedlock too.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then of course my oldest son, I was under huge pressure to abort him when I turned myself into the state.
Yeah.
So they were pretty upset with me when I wouldn't let them do that.
But you had that civil right to deny the
Well,
care, or
what
did you?
I did, I I kind of played I played the game with them a little bit. I was on the run from the state. I'd been put in state care, and then I was actually sexually assaulted in state care, so I just left. I thought, you know what, if I'm they're trying to protect me, this, that, fine. That's great. I would love to be protected, but this is the same thing that I was doing out there. Only if I go back to, the man who bought me, I can get high while I do this, which really takes the sting right off of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I just left and went back. And when I found out that I was pregnant, I stayed out on the run on purpose and skipped the first few months of what I would have liked to have been getting like prenatal care and things like that, because I knew that if I got to 24 weeks and turned myself into the state, then they couldn't touch me.
How old were you?
14. I had my first child when I was 14.
Okay. So did you get pregnant at 13? I
Yeah,
mean, 24
roughly,
weeks
yeah.
that's a big chunk of your percentage-wise of your life at
You
this time.
betcha. Yeah. So I kind of hit out and just said, you know what, if I can get to 24 weeks before I turn myself in, I know they won't be able to legally come for me.
Okay.
But he would have absolutely been aborted otherwise, I believe. I think the state of Arizona had the right to force me, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
But yeah, they were technically my parents. But Jeff memo. So we start with restructuring the family, postponing and avoiding marriage, alter the ideal of family size, right? From 1969, we've done that.
Hmm.
Compulsory education of children, encourage increased homosexuality. So not
Hmm.
only can it be encouraged, but we're going to do that. Fertility control agents in the water supply. I don't know if they've done that, but maybe. Um,
There's a hormonal
I think about that
consequences
sometimes.
to the
Yeah.
chemicals that are in society, and
Well,
that's a very under researched aspect to the rise of transgenderism is the
and I thought
amount of
about that
chemicals.
too.
Yeah.
How many years we've spent putting hormone birth control in the water supplies just
Yeah.
because of what women aren't absorbing into our bodies. And how's that affecting these men, right? Is
Mm.
that is that why we're seeing, these rates of autogynephilics? Like it's very interesting. So I don't know if they've done that, but next item, encourage women to work, modify your tax policies, tax marriage, tax children, tax married more than single, reduce or eliminate paid maternity leave or benefits, reduce or eliminate children's or family allowances, bonuses for delayed marriage, compulsory abortion of out of wedlock
Right.
pregnancies,
Yeah.
compulsory sterilization of all who have two children, except for a few that would be allowed to have three, confining childbearing to your limited number of adults, stock certificates for permits for children, maybe. Um, Abortion and sterilization on demand, contraceptives to be distributed non-medically, so through the mail, we can mail out the abortion pills.
Hmm.
Pensions for women of 45 with less than one child. So no,
Hmm.
if you have no children, we'll pay you. They haven't done that yet. Maybe they will in the future. I'm not sure. But then it goes on to say,
The amount of cat mommery in the Democrat Party might vote it in eventually. Sorry.
I don't blame them on that one. They're so fuzzy and sweet. But yeah, eliminate welfare payments after your first two children. Promote chronic depression. You'll have fewer children if you're very depressed.
Hmm.
Require women to work and provide few child care facilities. Eliminate or limit your public financed medical, or you can just make it really poor quality. You don't even have to take it away. You could just make it so that it's not really helping anyone. I've seen that kind of happen too.
Hmm.
Housing policies, discouragement of private home ownership, make it too expensive. Stop awarding public housing based on your family size, improve your contraceptive technology. Um, so just, a whole list of how to make it better around here without all these people. I
Yeah.
mean, how
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your aunts and your uncles and your cousins and your grandparents are lousy.
Yeah.
Get rid of them.
Could we focus on this the reproductive technology with regard to minor pregnant people?
Oh yeah.
What was the in your position, if you want to speak to it, how
Sure.
did you make that decision to have a child when
Oh,
you
well,
were
I
in
mean,
such a situation that I could see the loss or an absence of faith in humanity?
sure. Um, so it wasn't so much of like a how for me. It was just I knew that there was life. I just knew. And I understand that there are situations that women find themselves in that feel really impossible. And I felt really at that time that I was in an impossible situation as well. But at the end of the day, all I could think of was if I'm living in the Roe v. Wade, I was born into Roe v. Wade, America. I could have, at any moment made one phone call and had the procedure done by the end of that day. And I just remember feeling very strongly that going after the most innocent member of this trio of issues that we had
Yeah.
going on was not the answer for me because, I was I was not I didn't get to be in charge of me, but I didn't want to be in charge of my child in that way either. And so I thought,
Mm.
we've got this poor soul that's being born into this situation. And, does he get it? If it was his body, would it be his choice? Like, if he had a voice, would he ask if because I have a body too, do I get a choice in this? So it was a core feeling. It was
Hmm.
just, he's alive. There's a life there. And I'm not to stamp that out just because I'm hurt.
Hmm.
So,
And so but that decision came
mhm.
with a great amount of work and responsibility. 24
Oh,
months of pregnancy. You did the full pregnancy at
yeah, all
14.
nine months of, yeah, pregnancy
Yeah.
with him. Yeah, he was born 8 pounds, 2 ounces. And that,
Not
for
small.
me also, no, not small. And also that for me meant childbirth. And, these are the sacrifices that you sign up for
Hmm.
ahead of time. But it's a sacrifice either way. And one ends in the beginning of somebody's life, and one ends in the end of
Yeah.
somebody's life. So, for them, it was easy for staff members at the group home or my caseworker or, people that were working my case to say things along the lines of, well, this is gonna really change things for you, and this is gonna be really awful for you, and but it was too late for them to have done anything about it anyhow, because I purposely waited so long to turn myself into the state. And I don't know. I remember just feeling very strongly. I mean, that you get, even at a young age, you get a maternal instinct, I think, as a woman, and you just know that there's life inside of you. And, while everybody was making it out to be the end of my life, it
Mm.
wasn't. It was just the beginning of his.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
what were the decisions you had to make about his life
um, well, as a
once you
14-year
finished
old,
that part of it?
yeah, once you get through with the pregnancy, the concern always was right afterward because I was in a group home that was supposed to be for young ladies that were pregnant under the age of 18 that were wards of the court. So it was specifically like the mom's home. Kale, my oldest, was born in 1997, and the Clinton administration passed a bill in 1996 on a federal level that stated that if it was like the Foster Care Adoption Act, I believe. I got it printed at home somewhere. So that was the bill that allocated funding from the Social Security Administration back to the states anytime an adoption was finalized out of foster care. So every child that was born into that house was taken away from their mother sooner or later. There was always a removal. There was always a reason they came up with, you weren't doing this well enough, you weren't doing that well enough. So they would come and take the child, they would, facilitate the adoption, and then the state would get the stipend from the Social Security Administration. So, I knew that was going to happen sooner or later just because it happened to all of us. I got to spend
Mm.
the first 3 months with him, which was very magical. The separation was very difficult.
I bet.
And yeah, because they take a piece of your heart. But again, you're living in this environment where, so and so just lost her daughter. because, they found out that instead of going to class one day, she went to make a phone call to her, friend or whatever. And so she skipped school and therefore, it was time. Or, so and so took her kids out to the mall one night and she got home late by a half an hour. So it was time to remove her kids. So there was always something.
Hmm.
So that, that happened, but we were mightily blessed. He got parents that cared so much. And then, the story later that I hear from him, or the one that he heard from his mom, was that she walked when she was ready to adopt through the state. She couldn't have children of her own. They walked her into a dark room full of cribs, all full of crying babies, and she could just choose one.
Hmm.
And Kale reached for her necklace. So
Hmm.
yeah, that got her heart, and that was it. He got really good parents out of the deal. So I don't begrudge any of it because of that, because he got a good upbringing and he's, grateful for life and doing very well. So it was rough for me,
Yeah.
but it was ultimately good for him. And the way they went about it wasn't exactly, I don't feel like it was very well above board, but the United States government can be that way sometimes. And at the end of the day, it shook out in a way that was most fair to him.
Yeah.
And so that's really what you want to see as a mom is your children do well and thrive. And he got that. So,
So, from your life, you're 14, you've had your
mm,
first child,
yep,
you have a few more years while the state has authority over you, right?
right.
Or
Yep.
do you get some authority yourself at 16 or something like that?
Well, okay, if I had stayed after I had Kale, I would have been able to do some, young adult transitional program where they help pay for your apartment for, a little while, and then, you do your own thing after you turn 18. But I didn't stay. I had him, and then once they removed him, I just thought, okay, well, this is not any place that I want or need to be.
Hmm.
And yeah, there just isn't a place in the world that I even want to be at all, honestly.
Yeah.
So I essentially, ran away, went back to just being able to use drugs and not be very conscious of, what I was doing. And then,
Wow.
of course, that
Yeah.
resulted in a second child. So
Mm.
I had a lot to learn when I was young and not a lot of guidance. So
Yeah. Well, where did you find that guidance? And thank you for speaking personally, because
yeah,
one, it's your story is sacred as your own
absolutely.
story. So there's that. But also, I think it does relate to this idea, this notion, this fact of child trafficking
Hmm.
and the infrastructure that the state sets up for young women specifically, and where that's wanting and where that's probably even harmful, and to what extent it's even helpful in the
Sure.
face of what we call trafficking. And I don't even
Right.
really know much about that topic, which I knew is a very huge and
It's
silent
big and
topic.
it's big and it's getting bigger and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. And that's actually the reason that I went into safe housing, into wanting to provide safe housing for women that are pregnant or parenting that are exiting trafficking. Or, we also have a clause. Our mission statement is building bridges to freedom from exploitation or abuse. That way we can handle women that are exiting trafficking. We can also handle women that are exiting domestic violence because, the two of
Hmm.
them can overlap at times. And either
Hmm.
way, it's not a good environment for a child. And if you're pregnant or parenting, it's tantamount to parenting success and being able to break down those generational traumas that tend to roll forward and forward and forward until you make the stop. My
Hmm.
guidance really came from the Lord. I met Jesus in 2015. And it's one of the reasons that I am cautious about speaking about abortion. Elective abortion, I think, is kind of I don't know. I don't want to call it a necessary evil because I don't believe it's necessary. I don't believe in banning anything either because I don't necessarily think that governmental bans do much of anything to get people to stop engaging in whatever behaviors they're engaging in that are unwanted, let's say. So I would love for our laws to be, robust and protective of women. After I had my youngest child, I had her via C-section. Every child I had from my twins afterward, were all C-sections because when I was pregnant with the twins, one of them was breech and it was just, easier. So after that, you have C-section. She was my third C-section, and I was very nervous to have any more children. I figured I had six, and that was plenty. So I opted for the tubal ligation, and they did it during my C-section, and unfortunately, it failed 6 months later. So I grew something in my right fallopian tube, and I was very, very ill as a result of it. Unfortunately, the hospitals had just kind of rolled out the first wave of the Affordable Care Act care. So you have to meet, criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in order to get treatment for this specific condition. You have to meet all these criteria. Well, I didn't have any pregnancy hormone in my blood. They were measuring my blood and my urine. I had no HCG. They're like, okay, well, we can see this thing in your, fallopian tube on the ultrasound, but you have no HCG in your blood or in your urine, so we know that you're not pregnant. And I said, well, it's odd because I have pregnancy symptoms, and either way, you can see something in the tube. I'm also fainting at this point. I'm tachycardic. My heart rate's at 209 beats a minute because I'm bleeding internally from this thing. I got these stab pains in my shoulder blades, and all I can do is sit in my chair and nurse my daughter. And I'm scared that I'm not going to be able to make it to take care of her in life. And I cannot get this obstetrical team to do anything for me because I don't have HCG, so I'm not meeting their criterion. So I understand very well that a woman's reproductive system is a super delicate thing, and you can't just craft laws that affect all women with a big umbrella and have everybody fit neatly into it and have
These little
everybody
flow
get
charts.
what they need, right?
Women are not flow charts.
No, we have flows, but we're not a flow chart, right?
Yeah.
So it's the thing. Everybody needs that individual looking upon, and we need our, medical care providers to be compassionate and, I think, oriented toward life, because that's another issue that we have with American medical care in the moment is that, one, it's for profit, but two, the other issues that you run into is that the overrepresentation of sadistic types in the medical field is scary and true. And there's very little oversight for people providing medicine. So as much as I want to say, well, I would really love for obstetrics to be more in charge of, what's happening with women and when they need emergent care that will end a pregnancy. Like, it should be a sacred walk that you take with your doctor if that's something that needs to happen for your life, because, your life can very well be in danger. Reproducing. That's a fact. But at the same time, who's holding those medical care providers accountable, and how many of them have good intentions? It's hard to track that too.
Mm-hmm.
So these are these are really sensitive areas, and, trying to craft laws again that, put everybody under this umbrella. It's a rough thing. And then doing it so that you can include children and make it so that they have the right to, not just their health outcomes, but also that sexual expression. It's so dodgy for me.
What you are, from your own personal story, what can happen with this freedom of sexual expression and access to reproductive technology, which is probably one of the more Orwellian phrases that I've heard this week.
Yeah.
You were pressured
Yeah.
to do this. And so you had to circumvent at great risk to yourself and effort on your part, because you knew that the system would channel you in this direction. So and there was a cutoff there at 24 weeks or whatever it was.
Yes, that was the legal cutoff. Yeah.
So they're racing. That's age discrimination. You shouldn't be able to discriminate based on age, even the unborn child. Mm-hmm. Like there should be no age. We should not consider time at all.
Right. Yeah.
This arbitrary cutoff of 24 weeks should be erased. So you know that the system behaving as it has behaved and as it will behave will use that law to put more mothers, young mothers specifically, into the abortion procedure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and the big issue for me too with that is, I like freedom. I want people to have freedom of choice,
Yeah.
but that needs to come along with some transparency. And so much of what we've made available to women and told women about what's available to them is, I feel, disingenuous. I think an insidious lie to tell a woman is that if you kill your child, you won't be poor anymore.
Hmm.
And that was a big one. That was a big one. You're going to have a greater rate of poverty if you don't abort. Well, we're all poor here now. So
Oh, well,
inflation,
there we go.
it's,
Well, and
yeah.
the
So,
collapsing population rates. So,
well, and by design.
hmm. Well, yeah, there's some really excellent work being done. One guy, Jason Bradley, I've had on my channel. I know him personally. He kind of charts the growth of the birth of control, and
Hmm.
I always recommend his channel to talk about the eugenicists and
Cool.
how they've, it's been a few centuries of them working on this,
Yeah,
and they have their reasons and they have their own psychology of what they want to do. But on the other
sure
side of
do.
it, there's just the human element because they're
Right.
thinking about population.
Hmm.
They're not thinking about the individual. I mean, I'm sure they're thinking of themselves, of course, in their private planes on the way to Davos or whatever.
Well, it's
But
just, it's something to me. We don't want too many people. Well, have you thought about volunteering yourself?
no,
No,
you are the
no.
carbon. They are not the
Right.
carbon. They want to reduce.
I'm I'm the bad carbon.
Yeah. What is this? What is your point of view on trafficking?
Mm.
And what can you define that? It's
Okay,
a
so
human being basically sold or
well,
shipped or
for
treated like
lack of
chattel.
a better term, you are a property of somebody or another.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be by force, fraud, or coercion. But in my world, my understanding of the world, the women that I've met while I was working in the adult entertainment industry, in both legal and illegal facets, poverty is very coercive. Are they considered victims? No, not legally. Would they consider themselves to be victims? No, they consider themselves to be making, informed choices.
Yeah.
However, those informed choices they consider themselves to be making are detrimental to their health and well-being over time. And none of them are very satisfied. Most of the women, if not all, wanted to be that I've met doing sex work, wanted to be doing something else.
Yeah.
That was never their ultimate goal, and they always talked about different ways to get out. That
Yeah.
was a big, term of conversation. So,
What options, like just generally speaking, and we would have to do a sample to like make any sort of data analysis of this, but what choices does a woman face when she ultimately chooses sex work?
mhm,
And let's say she doesn't do that as an aspirational goal, because I'm sure
right.
some women are like that. You can hear about them on the internet. To what degree you believe them or not is up to you.
Yeah.
But if a woman is faced with, survival and sex work's on the
Yes.
table, what other options does she generally have?
What I considered my options to be, because when I worked in legal sex work, my twins were very young. I had split from their father. He was a very abusive man, and we'd gone to couples counseling. And my couples counselor is actually a friend of mine in the now. She wasn't at the time, but I stopped seeing her as a client, and we just remained friends. And she's very,
Hmm.
very pleased that I didn't stay in that relationship. And the wife that he took on after I left is in a really bad spot in life now. And that really would have been me. So, the when I was in sex work and my boys were little, I felt like I was in college at the time and trying to make it all hang together and pay for yeah, a household by yourself so that you can provide a place for your children when you are home, which I was hardly ever there. I was only there when my boys were there because I was working unpaid internship. I was going to school for social work and, working at
Hmm.
night, just trying to kept keeping everything paid for, keeping the lights on and that. And in my mind, like with my schedule, the way that it was, with what I had to get done in a day, I thought to try to better myself in the future and try to better my boys' situation in their futures. I felt like it was either going to be legal sex work or dealing drugs. I'm just like, well, I can work all night and I can, hustle and I can deal and I will have enough money to cover everything, but then I'm putting myself in legal jeopardy
Hmm.
because, what I'm doing isn't it's I'm not in the goodwill of the law then.
Yeah.
And so, here I am over here this is legal at least. Is it preferable? No. But honestly, I would have rather been dealing drugs, as dangerous and awful as that would have been, because
Hmm.
then I'd be able to keep my clothes on. Um, but that's what I felt like my options were,
Hmm.
Either way, you're, putting poison into the world, kind of.
This is uncomfortable conversation territory, but what is legal sex work? What do you mean by that?
Working in strip clubs,
Okay.
working
Yeah.
in, I mean, and you depending on where you're at in the United States, that can include brothels. Um, you
So
know,
there are, okay, I guess Nevada has,
Nevada has legal brothels. Arizona, where I'm from, has illegal brothels.
okay.
Yeah.
How illegal are they? I
Oh,
mean, how
very.
much are, okay,
Yeah, they're
but how
not.
much are they prosecuted or,
Oh,
you know,
no, no. Yeah,
so they just kind of go,
yeah, as far as I know, in the United States, I've never seen or heard of an organization that professionally provides a place for, your trafficking rings, if you would. I've heard of one prosecution.
okay.
One. That's of my knowledge, that's been about it. Because, if you're bringing in money for the county, they like that. And if as long as you're licensed as something
Mm.
and you're not doing it out on the lawn, who can
What about
it's
their freedom of sexual expression? What about their,
we need to be able to freely express ourselves. We should be able to go out on the lawn and pay for it, right? Um, if they were in New York and not Arizona, maybe they would have legal brothels. I don't know.
yeah.
So, so it depends on where you are in the United States. Legal sex work can look very, very different from one
Yeah.
state to the next state,
But did
from one
you,
town to the next town.
just as a thought experiment, what other options did you have?
Again, with
Drugs,
yeah,
it's
selling
illicit because
drugs,
you need easy money at that point in life.
you need fast money and you need
Yeah.
a lot of it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have something like, a credit history, let's say. So you're
Yeah.
like me, you come out of, state care at 18 and you never quite get it together and you're living off of a guy who tells you that, we're done doing this and
Okay.
it's for your
Yeah.
better interest, right? So you're technically a ghost in the world.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to get a job, you've got to go to college.
Yeah.
And if you want to be able to put that into your schedule at all, especially if you're raising children at the same time, your free time is like this little weird chunk at the end of the day or in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
And, I possibly could have like been a bartender maybe. But again, right, like you wonder how much revenue you can bring in that way versus dancing for,
Hmm.
6 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
It ends up being a significant difference. And then, that'll put a little bit of buffer into your bank account for times like when you get sick and you can't
Yeah.
work for a week or something like that.
Yeah.
You need to be able to plan for those things, especially when you're all on your own.
With your experience of state programs,
Mm.
would you be in favor of the state or another institution providing some sort of support for women in the position that you were in so that they can avoid sex work and
That's
other
what
illicit work?
that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
When Leah's place opens, we'll be able to take on two families at a time, which means two moms and up to four kids. We have one safe house right now in our region that's operating, and they cannot have any children on their premises. There's something about the way that it shook out legally, and if you're a mom that enters into their program, you have to be separated from your child. You'll have your child go to a host foster family. And for me,
Jesus Christ.
being separated from my oldest child was one of the most traumatic things that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
So if a mom wants to exit and she wants a better life for the
Yeah.
child, for a child in the future, she should have a safe place to go.
So as far
And
as the government is concerned, there could be better policy to allow private entities to serve this function. Would that
there
be?
there's some pathways now that are
Yeah.
available. I think, the movement behind providing safe housing isn't a popular one. And I think that's part of the issue. Like, we got our 501(c)(3. We're not for profit now. And so I've got like one more form to file with the federal government. And then I can approach the Department of Justice in the spring for a voucher to buy a residence. And then we can start housing, which would be great. And so that money is there and it rolls over every year. It's available every year for somebody to come along and say, I just want to
Okay.
house. Can I buy a location? So, there is some stuff out there that's available now. It's just that it's not being utilized. I think, the money really became available a few years ago. Thankfully, it's federal, so it rolls over every year. It doesn't run out. They don't have to
Yeah.
reallocate it.
Yeah.
So
But
they cut a pretty good check, the DOJ, for, some anti-trafficking measures. It's just a matter
okay.
of putting them into motion.
Yeah, but with the way that the current DOJ and possibly the future
Mm.
DOJ, 60 days,
Yeah.
people have
Yeah.
some choice to make.
Sure do.
With the direction that they're going with regard to discrimination, I'm sure that they will eventually, whether we like it or not, or whether it's a good idea or not, tie the title stuff, the discrimination stuff, to the funding, so that you cannot
Possibly.
discriminate based on sex. And what you are
That's the
doing,
issue.
what we're
Right.
talking about right here, is a
Yeah.
specifically, and not to say that men don't get trafficked
They
and
do.
young men don't get trafficked, they
Right.
do. Women, they're different, they're biologically different. They
We
need
are.
special targeted support,
Hmm.
especially because they have the children and that
Right.
reproductive thing, and especially because of their sexual desirability and
Hmm.
how that is literally currency for young women, whether
Yes.
social or financial.
Yes.
And so eroding the definition of a woman impacts the care that women can be got, and then the financing and the backing that
Hmm.
are accessible to people such as you are trying to help them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, being able to protect what we are doing. Again, I think it comes down to not voting in the ERA. And I was, you know, I sat I sat on my laurels a little bit with the ERA when because it was first announced to the public after it had been passed through the House twice, the New
Hmm.
York State Legislative House, and then Marjorie Burns sued to have it removed from the ballot, based on the Attorney General not having seen it, right? Because there's a process that's got to take place. The Attorney General is supposed to see it, I guess, and to make sure that it doesn't contraindicate anything else that's already written in the New York State Constitution, which I feel it does contraindicate. I feel like it contraindicates the public health title, where it says the health of the state's residents is a matter of public concern, and the state
Hmm.
and its subdivisions must provide for it. And if we were really operating in that vein, then we would be bringing in the CAS report and the WPATH files to look at, and maybe even some of the work that Genevieve Gluck has done to look at where this all came from and what it's doing to people,
Hmm.
namely young people. So,
Hmm.
yeah, the AG, I guess, didn't look at it and they passed it anyway. So Marjorie Burns sued. So it actually went away for a minute. There was a couple of months where it wasn't a part of the plan for November 5th anymore. So I thought, okay, great. I can get back to doing safe housing work and I can just focus on, making sure that my kids have what they need for the coming school year. Like we just,
Yeah. Yeah.
it went away. And so
Yeah.
I thought, great, that went away. And I don't have to deal with it anymore. And then Letitia James, who's our attorney general, actually sued to have it put back on. And so now, right. And so now here we
Hmm.
are. And it's
Why?
just, why would you sue to have that put back on the ballot?
Yeah. Is this a
Discrimination.
woman or a
Letitia
woman?
James, yeah, she's a woman, and I don't know if
Okay.
she has children or
Yeah.
not. I wonder about those things.
Yeah.
Whether we have legislators that are dreaming these things up or talking about bringing them into, the landscape, whether they were mothers, are mothers,
Yeah.
what their feelings
Why
really
is that so
are.
important?
I just think if they mothered a child, if you've been with one of your kids through the teen years and you've been, even if you've been a teenager yourself, there's an operation happening of a person who has an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. You have an underdeveloped amygdala, and those things are working together. And really, what that means in real time is that when you're a teenager, you're making all of your decisions from like a purely impulsive,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
primitive part of yourself. And
Hmm.
so to put the kind of power in the hands of that person that is, life and death, sexual expression. Because when you express yourself sexually with somebody, like that's, life and death can both occur from that one, that
Hmm.
one union. So it's
Yeah.
major. And I don't think that we're not, again, it's about consent. It's great, but it's about informed consent, and we're not informing anybody.
Well,
And you can't
the
be
information
informed if you're
itself,
under the age of 18.
yeah, especially if you're school and all the authorities in your life accepting certain, parents. Well, the whole system is flooding your brain with this gender ideology.
Right.
Pardon me,
Yes.
bullshit,
Yeah.
right?
You've been primed your
So
whole
you've been
life
primed. You've been
now.
primed to do that. So that's not informed consent.
No.
That's manipulated. That's
Exploit
manufactured consent.
To me, that's, it falls into trafficking by way of exploitation. And so, that what is trafficking, for me, it's just, how much are you getting off of somebody else that's being exploited?
Yeah.
And to me, introducing somebody into becoming a lifelong consumer of the medical industrial complex in the United States is tremendously exploitative,
Hmm.
tremendously, and not to mention what you'll be doing to their body, the physical changes that you're going to be making to them. And the technology, if you ever spend time in the detransition forum on Reddit, the medical technology is not there.
Hmm. Hmm.
For all that we say we know and can do,
Hmm.
hearing these kids'
Well,
stories
certain people don't
about,
want to admit our ignorance on these matters, and ignorance is steadily becoming quantifiable as the reports are come out
well,
through
I
the
want,
various
yeah,
censorious processes that are governing what the experts are exposing us to.
right. So it's just, I don't, it's, I don't want to laugh, but like it's so ridiculous to me. It's
Yeah.
so ridiculous that we would ever get together and say, what we really need is for kids to be able to express themselves sexually. We are just falling apart at the seams as a country because kids aren't getting sex enough. I don't I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, if
Yeah.
you look at the draft memo and it sets
Hmm.
everybody up for a future of
Yeah.
only being born if they want you to be born. And
Speaking of birth, how were you reborn? What was that?
oh Jesus, yeah, I met Jesus when I was again my fallopian tube was blown. I
Yeah.
had a six month old daughter, and my youngest son was at that time 2 years old. And it was just me, and my husband's a working class guy, and
Yeah.
he doesn't know the first thing about female anatomy. I mean, well, he does because we have
You
kids.
know.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
like this much.
He knows the
Well,
second thing about
well,
it.
he knows the first thing, but not the second thing. That's what
Okay.
he said. He said to me when we first got together, and I had terrible complications with our first child because I had
Oh.
an IUD in place when I got pregnant with him.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I know, yeah,
Whoa.
I know. So bed rest and all of that and bleeding,
Yeah.
but we
Okay.
made it. I made it. It was beautiful.
You, the technological bureaucratic state has not been kind to you and your
No,
body.
it's been very rough on me.
Yeah.
So I'm very blessed to be alive as a result of all of the things. And so is my 12-year-old son. So yeah, it's a good thing. And oh my gosh, it was just so being sick like that with him being so young and her being just a baby and my husband not really knowing how to handle any of it. I mean, we're going from one emergency department to another because we know what the problem is, but nobody will treat it. And, again, what he said to me about female anatomy when we first got together was there's the man in the boat and then there's everything else, right?
Yes.
So
Basically, it's you.
basically,
It's
right. That is
Odysseus.
Yeah, yeah. So that was his concept of, female reproductive health. That was as far as his knowledge
Yeah.
went. So he's having to try to explain these things to doctors and nurses, and the nurses are always very supportive, and the doctors are always very unhelpful.
Yeah.
And then, I'm
Hmm.
doing things like being away from my daughter who is, breastfed entirely. And so I'm not even being able to stay long. I can't stay long enough at these places to fight back with these people. I get there and I'm just like, look, this is what is happening. Can you please help me? My husband's trying to explain it. I'm fainting, and they just
Hmm.
won't or can't for whatever reason. The legal technology, the legal terminology didn't support doing anything about it. I don't know. So I went home and I just remember sitting in the reclining chair and I had a little blood pressure cough because my blood pressure was tanked. I wasn't doing well. And I
Hmm.
remember I was taking my blood pressure and it wouldn't even read because it was so low. And I was just trying to stay alive to nurse my daughter. And the Lord came and just visited me. And it was so life changing in all respects. And he picked me back up and he put me on my feet. And he told me that I still had work to do. So it was, that time in my life was really terrifying. And I don't wish it on anybody, but I wouldn't go back and not do it
Hmm.
because of what came out of it.
Hmm.
So I didn't even know that was 2015. I didn't know yet that I was going to be involved in doing any of the things that I'm involved in today. So
Hmm. Hmm.
he told me that I had a path to walk forward and that, he was going to heal me. He did. So I have all the medical paperwork from that time, but in nowhere does it ever say that I was treated because I wasn't.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what about your heart, if you don't mind me asking?
I
Being
did.
exposed to this kind of parenting, upbringing, and then the life that you clawed through.
Yeah. He did a work in me at that time, but it wasn't the end all be all. He, really walked with me all through the process
Okay.
and, formulating what we started out as with the Safe Housing Project from where we started to what we are now. He led the whole thing. And during that time, my own personal growth and flourishing really kind of happened, right? So as this project has grown, I've done a lot of healing,
Yeah.
and he just and he continues to bring animals into my life that really help
Yeah.
with just the physicality of it, the touch and wanting to be touched. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just such a good life, and it's
Wow.
something I never thought I was going to be able to do. I never thought when I was younger, when I was 12, if you'd asked me if I, could imagine growing up and having a garden in the backyard and being able to go, grab a few things from it and come inside and make dinner, I never would have thought. And, I get to live that.
Hmm.
So and it's spectacular and extraordinary, and I can't wait to share it with other women that want to leave
Yeah.
trafficking with their children, and want better for their kids because it's so possible. The
Yeah.
healing is possible, and it's the best healing there is. Healing from the Lord, the healing to the spirit, the healing to the heart. It did more work in me than any counseling I ever went through.
Hmm.
It did more work in me than, the traditional mental health care model.
Hmm.
And I'd be lying if I said anything else. And it's what I would always tell somebody who wants healing, but you don't push that. So,
Yeah.
your faith and your spirit is so personal and it's fragile. And yeah, you can lead a horse to water, kinda.
Yeah. It's the first and final freedom.
Yeah. So you don't, you can't step on that at all, nor would you want to.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if anybody ever asks me what's the best therapy? Jesus. I'm sorry. It's a
Hmm.
super unpopular opinion, but well, it is. I mean, nobody wants that answer. They want me to say like, oh, I went to yoga and I just got, once I could put my leg behind my head, I felt great and everything started working out. But that's not
There's a joke about legs behind your heads for your whole life, and But it was Jesus around your heart that actually,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what it is.
yeah.
So it's
There's
good.
this, I don't want to be reductive, and I apologize to any listeners who might take offense or dislike to this. It's not even a question, but you brought up your man, talking about like there's a man in the boat and there's everything
There's
else,
everything else, right?
you know, and there's there's an there's an aspect of the woman or of women, each individual woman, that is really hard to see directly, but it comes across in the periphery in how you relate to life and how life relates to you. And I think we've lost a lot in our culture by thinking mechanistically, and in the gender debate, people try to solve the trans question by going down to our gametes.
Mm,
But there's a spiritual reality.
yeah.
There's a psychological reality. There's a cultural reality to what a woman is, and it's through our life and our story that the reality of what you're here to do and what you are becomes manifest. And I see that in your life and how many children you've had and how many lives you touched, and like your constant interfacing with kittens and beings, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's something that you're like, like we can say what a woman is, and we're only describing the mushroom fruit, but what woman
Hmm.
actually is, the mycelium, is like in how
Yeah.
much you touch and bring together. And I feel that in you. I feel like you're manifesting something that's like a secret and sacred reality that we really lost touch with because we don't have eyes that are wide enough to picture that. But I thank you for
It's
that.
that Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
You just let him lead and everything works.
Yeah.
And yeah, the wild adventures that the Lord will take you on if you let him.
Hmm.
They're pretty great.
So, are you in New York State now? Is that where?
Yeah. Yep, I live in
Uh,
New York. I've been in New York for 21 years and I love it here.
yeah.
New York is absolutely my happy place. I live
Yeah.
upstate
Yeah. I would
and
assume. I've
yeah.
assumed through all the conversation that that's probably where you landed. And Leia's
Yeah.
place is gonna be up there somewhere then.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And how much support are you guys looking for, or what are you guys offering right now? If people wanted to chip in, or if people
Oh,
wanted to
yeah.
work with you in New York, one, be aware of ERA. What's that
ERA.
ERA? What does that even
The
stand for?
Equal Rights Amendment. See, again, they're
Ah,
using those terms, rights, equal rights, non-discrimination. The language is very specifically chosen, and they leave it so broad.
it's
Um,
serpentine. It's very,
I'm right, and to not discuss it, to throw it on the ballot for November 5th, and just to let because again, it goes to the public, and it's up to us whether it's in or out. And
mhm.
we need
Well,
we need enough people to vote it down
yeah,
because
yeah.
anybody
And
who
I
doesn't
know
know.
this for a fact that if it's defeated now, they're just gonna we're gonna re-amend
Well,
it. They're gonna
they'll repackage
retry.
is it well they'll repackage it, they'll try it again in a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've hit a lot behind the abortion rights portion of it just because they know that we're such a pro-abortion state. We have legal abortion all the way up until birth here. So and the fear mongering that we're post Roe v. Wade and that we will the women would lose their abortion rights if we don't cement this into the Constitution is that's the only advertisement I've seen
Okay.
for this act that they
Yeah.
want to push forward. So,
Yeah.
but for Leah's Place, yeah, anybody who wants to get involved, www.leahsplace, all one word, lowercase, dot
LEA or LEAH?
Leah. Yep,
Okay.
Leah's Place dot space.
Dot space.
Dot
Okay.
space. Yep. And so when you click on there, I've got a little donate Venmo. And if you guys, want to put into the legal fund, again, we're, doing the work of putting together our legal infrastructure at this
Mm-hmm.
time,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully housing within the next 12 months. But again,
Yeah.
it really depends on what happens with ERA. And I have to reach out to my legal team and ask
Yeah.
them what their thoughts are
Yeah.
on whether or not we're going to be able to discriminate against people and their sexual expression.
or their
as an
sexedness.
yeah, something as an organization so that we can serve mothers
Yeah.
that have double X chromosomes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, those birthing people.
the birthing people, right? Only us birthings.
Yeah. What about somebody who's in the market for a kitten?
Oh, yes, please. But again, I'm being very careful about vetting because
Yeah.
we really want to make
Well,
sure that these
only
guys,
the most upright, upstanding people listen to this, anyways. So you
that's
don't have to worry
good.
about that.
Right. I would imagine that those would be the best people in the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got Larry, I've got Mo, I've got Curly. So I have
Okay.
two males and a female, and Mo is the runt of the litter, but she's real teeny and about this big. She's black, and
Hmm.
they'll be ready to go in about 4 weeks.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah,
I'll link to a way for people to contact you.
Leah's Place.space. Yep, you can
Okay. Oh, wow.
contact me
You
right
do
through
this
there.
full service. You're going to
Oh,
offer
yeah.
women housing, people cats.
Yes,
Probably
yes, yes.
you grew too much squash. You probably got like a link to your excess squash
I
basket.
I make yellow squash custard pies out of
Oh,
my
wow.
excess squash. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so
Sounds good. We'll have to get you that recipe. I'll have to get that recipe from you.
it's
So,
great. It's it's very, very tasty. So yeah, I do. We plan on doing it all, ladies and animals, and let's live a
yeah,
good life
yeah,
together.
yeah.
Yeah, for our kids.
Amen. Well, Jess, thank you very
Yeah,
much for showing up today.
yeah.
It was
Thank you for having
totally
me.
surprised. I had no idea what we are going to talk about. It's just a
Yeah,
wonderful conversation. I'm so blessed to
I
have
agree.
had this time with you. So thank you very much.
Thanks for talking with me. I really appreciate you help getting the word out because ERA is upon us.
Yep. We need
So
to make the right decisions, make good
I
choices, America.
I pray.
Yeah.